The plan was never meant to reach my ears, but as I passed the slightly ajar dining room door, their words drifted out like smoke. My name, the Christmas pageant, the muffled laughter. A special surprise segment, a ridiculous mechanic's jumpsuit, a punchline about grease that never quite washes off. They were running lines like actors perfecting a scene, each delivery crisper than the last. I stood frozen in the hallway, clutching the gift I'd spent an hour wrapping. The overhead chandelier suddenly too bright, and the marble floor ice-cold beneath my boots. Hours later, Mom's voice cracked over the phone, trembling with something that sounded almost like fear. "Where are you?" I didn't answer, because by then my own surprise was already in motion. If you ask when this really started, it wasn't that Christmas at all. It started years earlier, inside the flawless Reed house on Maple Crest Lane in Plano, where every picture frame hung at perfect 90-degree angles, where the hardwood gleamed like glass, where the lighting was always warm and golden, but nothing ever landed gently. I was 18 the evening I told them I wanted to study automotive technology. I can still smell the rosemary chicken cooling on the island. Dad Daniel Reed, proud owner of Reed & Co. Fine Furnishings, was laying out silverware with the same precision he used for showroom displays. When the words left my mouth, he let the heavy serving spoon slip from his fingers. It hit the tile with a clang that rang longer than physics should allow. Mom, Marlene, queen of charity auctions and flawless holiday spreads, blinked once slowly like her brain needed a moment to reboot. Aaron, the golden son, third-year medical resident, stared at his plate to hide the corner of a smirk. Brielle, part-time dental hygienist and full-time influencer, didn't bother hiding anything. She laughed, a bright, cutting sound that sliced the room in half. The spoon spun, wobbled, stilled. I knelt to pick it up, my fingertips leaving faint black crescents of engine oil on the stainless steel. No one had to say it. The silence spelled it out in capital letters, "That's not who we are." After that night, the weather pattern was set. Mom would leave neatly folded printouts on the kitchen island. Job listings for medical billing clerk, executive assistant, dental office receptionist. Always with the same gentle smile that never reached her eyes. Something more suitable, sweetheart, cleaner. Especially when you're around people. Aaron, on the rare weekends he came home, would rest a practiced hand on my shoulder. "All that heavy lifting, just watch your back, okay? Bodies break easier than you think." Brielle filmed lifestyle content in the sun-drenched living room, ring light glowing like a halo. Whenever I crossed behind her, she'd wrinkle her nose for the camera. Sorry guys, garage smell again," she'd say, and the comments would flood with crying laughing emojis. I learned to move quietly. At family gatherings, I walked on the balls of my feet so my boots wouldn't click, kept my voice low, tucked my hands into sleeves if the grease stains were fresh. Silence kept the surface of the house mirror smooth. Silence kept their brand intact. One night when I was 20, I stood at the kitchen sink scrubbing a pan while the rest of them laughed in the adjoining room over a story I wasn't part of. Steam rose around my wrists. I looked down at the stubborn black crescent under my thumbnail and understood, clear as daylight, exactly what I was allowed to be inside those walls and what I was not. Fast forward 7 years. I let myself into the house that December evening carrying a small silver box tied with a perfect satin bow. Something I'd picked out after a 12-hour shift. Hands still smelling of brake cleaner. The porch lights glowed like always, promising warmth that never quite delivered. Mom was deeper inside, directing the church Christmas program volunteers with her usual graceful authority. Dad's voice drifted down the hall, calm and rehearsed. I followed the sound past the gallery wall of framed achievements. Aaron's medical school diploma front and center, Brielle mid-laugh in golden hour lighting, and stopped when I reached the dining room. The door stood open just enough for a blade of light to cut across the dark floor. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but then I heard my name. "Peyton," Mom said, tasting it like a punchline. Soft laughter. Dad again lower. "The Navy coveralls, right? With the name patch, it'll kill." Aaron gave his polite doctor chuckle. Brielle chimed in, "And don't forget the giant plastic wrench prop." Then the line about "some stains never come out, the congregation will eat it up." Paper rustled, someone timing the skit. Dad delivered the closer, satisfied. "We'll read the Christmas letter right after." Perfect segue. I felt the gift box grow heavier in my hands, the ribbon cutting into my palm. The hallway air turned arctic. No one inside sensed me standing there. I backed away without a sound, set the silver box on the entry table like I was leaving a bomb and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just left. The suburb lights blurred as I drove, tires humming on cold asphalt. My phone buzzed, Mom's name flashing, but I let it die in the cup holder. The only place still open was a 24-hour Shell station on the edge of town, neon buzzing harsh against the frost. I parked beneath the flickering sign, killed the engine, and sat in the sudden quiet. My hands rested on the steering wheel, the familiar scent of motor oil rising from the rag in my pocket. For once, that smell felt like armor. I called Noor Patel, my best friend, my accountant, the only person who'd watched me build something that was actually mine. She answered on the second ring, voice calm at 11:17 p.m. "You good? Open the lease folder for Reed Real Estate LLC." A pause, keys clicking. "Peyton, you sure you're sitting down? I'm in my truck." She waited while I pulled the folder up on my phone. I rarely opened it after hours, but there it was. Commercial lease agreements, payment logs, ownership docs. I tapped the file for the 18,000 square foot showroom on the best corner in Plano. The crown jewel Dad bragged about at every Rotary lunch. Tenant, Reed & Co. Fine Furnishings, LLC landlord. Reed Real Estate Holdings, LLC sole member. Peyton Marlene Reed. I'd known it for years, of course. I'd bought the building at 25 with profits from my own shop, quietly, through the LLC Noor set up. But I'd never felt it until that moment under the buzzing neon. I scrolled, 3 months delinquent. Pending market rate adjustment, nearly double. Non-renewal clause I'd highlighted in yellow 6 months ago and then ignored because, family. Noor's voice was soft. "They're squatting in a building you own, Peyton. And they're about to get a very expensive wake-up call if you want one." I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Then I opened my laptop on the passenger seat, the cab glowing blue. "Walk me through it," I said, and she did. We drafted everything clean and merciless. Notice of default, notice of intent not to renew, updated rent schedule based on current comps, demand for payment with late fees, verified ownership docs. Every form time-stamped, every box checked. By 1:04 a.m. the packet was complete. I scheduled same-day courier to the church Christmas Eve, 6 p.m. "Delivery, attention Marlene Reed." Noor said quietly, "If they wanted a Christmas surprise, they're about to get the deluxe version." I didn't smile. "This isn't revenge," I told her. "It's just consequences." I hit send. Closed the laptop. Wiped my hands on the rag that still smelled like home to me. And drove north. Christmas Eve at First Presbyterian looked exactly like every year. Thousands of twinkle lights, red poinsettias flanking the stage, the scent of pine and cinnamon hanging in the air like perfume. Mom glided through the fellowship hall in pearls and velvet, touching garlands into perfect position. Dad practiced his annual State of the Reed family speech in front of a mirror. Aaron adjusted his tie. Brielle angled her phone for the ideal story's backdrop. At 6:47 p.m. the courier walked in, boots dripping melted snow, carrying a thick white envelope with no holiday sticker, no ribbon. He asked for Marlene Reed. She accepted it with a gracious smile, probably assumed another generous donation. She slid it open beside the dessert table. The smile died mid-bloom. Papers slid out like cards from a deck. Notice of default in bold, followed by ownership transfer records, payment history, and a new monthly rent figure that made her knees buckle slightly. Daniel appeared at her elbow. "Marlene," she couldn't speak. Aaron took the top page, scanned it, went very still. Brielle whispered, That's Dad's store lease. Peyton owns the building." Conversation in the room ebbed like someone had pulled a plug. Even the children's choir stopped mid-note. One of the ushers quietly killed the stage spots. Mom's hand shook so hard her pearls rattled. She stepped into the hallway and dialed me 3 times. On the 4th, I picked up. I was standing on the porch of a rented cabin outside Estes Park, snow falling thick and soundless. Noor was inside making cocoa. The air smelled only of pine and wood smoke. Mom's voice came out thin, splintered. "Where are you?" In the background, I heard chairs scraping, someone crying quietly, Dad barking questions at no one. I watched snow collect on the railing and answered the only question that mattered. "Did you like your gift?" Silence, real silence, poured through the phone. The kind that happens when someone finally understands the game has changed and they're no longer the ones holding the cards. "Peyton, any further communication goes through the LLC inbox," I said, calm, almost gentle. "Merry Christmas, Mom." I hung up. Christmas morning dawned white and hushed. I drank coffee on the porch while Noor slept in, boots crunching the only tracks in fresh powder. My phone held one new email from Dad's subject line. Flagship store lease next steps. No anger, no pleading, just bullet points and proposed timelines. I replied in the same tone. Closed the app. Tightened a loose screw on the porch swing with the multi-tool I keep in my coat. Fixed something for once that didn't cost me anything. Later, the sun climbed and the snow glared so bright it hurt. I stood there until my fingertips went numb, watching light catch on the faint black crescent still under my thumbnail. In plain, that mark had been a punchline. Out here, it was just proof I'd built something real. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're the shape of what you finally refuse to carry for other people. If a story like this lingers in your chest, if it sounds like footsteps you've already taken or footprints you're still afraid to leave, stay a while. There are more truths waiting, and some silences were always meant to be broken.